Will Emerson had exactly 6 minutes to get his daughter to school and himself to the job interview that might change their lives. He gripped the steering wheel with one hand and a lukewarm cup of gas station coffee in the other as his 6-year-old, Nora, sang off-key from the back seat. "Daddy, you're wearing 2 different shoes," she said, giggling. He glanced down, one black, one brown, perfect. They pulled up to the school with seconds to spare. Will jumped out, helped Nora with her backpack, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Be good, baby. I love you." "I love you more," she grinned, then ran off. He got back in the car, muttered a prayer, and drove like a man on the edge. The interview was at a fancy downtown office tower well above his pay grade, or current lack thereof. His resume was wrinkled, his tie was a little crooked, and the coffee in his hand was the only thing keeping him upright. As he rushed through the revolving doors, juggling his folder, keys, and cup, he collided full speed into someone stepping out of the elevator. The coffee flew. "Oh no, no, no," he started. A sharp gasp, followed by a stream of brown liquid splattering across a pristine white blazer, echoed through the lobby. "Are you kidding me?" the woman said, her voice tight, irritated but also oddly calm. Will froze. "I am so sorry, it was an accident. I wasn't looking. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, swear. Please, I." The woman looked up at him, her dark green eyes narrowing as she peeled off the stained jacket. Her dress underneath was untouched, but the blazer was ruined. She was stunning, the kind of beautiful that made you forget your own name. High heels, sleek dark hair, and an energy that screamed power. Will swallowed. "I'll fix it. I can Venmo you or wait, do people still use Venmo? I think I have cash." She blinked at him, then looked him up and down. Wrinkled shirt, mismatched shoes, that coffee, and the desperation written all over his face. "Relax," she said finally. "It's fine." "You're serious. You're not gonna sue me or something." That made her snort. "You think I'd waste my time suing a guy over a $5 coffee?" "7," Will muttered. "I splurged." Her mouth twitched. "You're late, aren't you?" He nodded. "Interview, 12th floor, it's important." She looked at the elevator, then back at him. "Go, you've got 2 minutes before they close the doors." Will hesitated. "But your jacket." "Go," she said again, and this time it wasn't a suggestion. He gave her one last apologetic glance and ran. The interview was a disaster. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman, the coffee, how she'd looked at him like she'd seen right through him. He didn't get the job. They told him, "We'll be in touch," before he even finished his sentence. Classic. By the time he picked up Nora from after-school care, he was running on fumes. "Did you get the job?" she asked, hopeful. He forced a smile. "Not this one, kiddo." They stopped by the park on the way home. Nora ran toward the monkey bars while Will sat on the bench, head in his hands. "You again," a voice said from behind. He looked up. There she was, coffee stained no more, but dressed just as elegantly, holding a paper bag in one hand and a new blazer over her arm. "What, how?" "I saw you come in. You looked like someone who could use a second chance," she said, handing him the bag. Inside was a fresh sandwich, a bottle of water, and a cookie. "I didn't know you were following me," he said, a little guarded now. She shrugged. "I wasn't. I work in the building, had a meeting." Then she sat beside him like they were old friends. "I'm Will," he said after a pause. She nodded. "Amara Hayes." He raised a brow. "You look like you on the place." She tilted her head. "Close. I own a few companies, including the one you just interviewed at." Will froze. "Wait, what?" Amara smiled. "Yep." He stared at her. "So you're a millionaire, yes. Technically multi, but who's counting?" Will's jaw dropped. "And you just gave me a sandwich?" You spilled coffee on me, she said dryly. It felt like a fair trade. They both laughed then. For the first time in weeks, Will felt like he could breathe. Nora came running over. Daddy, who's this? Amara glanced at him. Will stood. This is a friend, her name's Amara. Amara crouched down. Hi, Nora, I like your sparkly sneakers. Nora grinned. I like your hair, you look fancy. Amara laughed. I'll take that. Will watched the two of them, something odd and warm blooming in his chest. You said you own the company, he asked quietly. She stood. I do, and I also say who gets hired. He blinked. Wait, are you offering me? A second interview, Amara said. This time with me, tomorrow be there at 9, and wear matching shoes. He laughed surprised. Deal. She started walking away, heels clicking on the pavement, then paused. Oh, and Will. Yeah. You still owe me a coffee. She threw him a wink over her shoulder and disappeared. He stood there stunned. Nora tugged on his sleeve. Is she your girlfriend? He laughed. No, not even close. But something in the way his heartbeat said maybe. Someday. Will adjusted the buttons on the only decent shirt he owned as he stood outside the glass-paneled office bearing the name Hayes Capital Group. Nora's backpack straps had left a crease down his shoulder, and he'd barely made it on time after dropping her off with Mrs. Darden, the retired teacher who lived 2 doors down and babysat when she could. He hadn't had money for a cab, so he jogged halfway to the bus stop to catch the early route downtown. This time, his shoes matched. A receptionist with a headset and a gaze that could freeze lava gave him a once-over before gesturing toward a set of large double doors. She's expecting you. The office was flooded with light from floor to ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Will stepped in cautiously, marveling at the sheer scale of the space's sleek black furniture, gold accents, and a massive abstract painting that looked like it belonged in a museum, not a corporate tower. Amara stood by the window, not in a meeting or on a call, but waiting for him. She wore a navy pantsuit that made her look even taller, her dark hair pulled back in a braid that trailed over her shoulder. There was a quiet confidence about her, the kind that couldn't be bought or faked. You showed, she said, folding her arms. I said I would, he replied. I don't back out of things unless I'm unconscious. She gestured toward a chair. Sit. Will eased into the seat, feeling like he was about to be interrogated by royalty. She remained standing, her gaze appraising but unreadable. I looked over your resume, she said, pulling a folder from the desk and flipping it open. You're overqualified for the position you applied for. He blinked. I didn't think I was qualified for anything here. You were applying to be a junior operations assistant, she said, lifting an eyebrow. You've managed construction crews, handled logistics on tight budgets, and coordinated timelines under pressure. That's not entry level. Those were survival jobs, Will said. They don't exactly scream corporate material. Amara tilted her head. Survival requires strategy. This company wasn't built on neat little degrees and polished shoes. It was built on risk. He met her gaze. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't need a yes man who went to business school because his parents paid for it. I need someone who knows how to make things work when everything's falling apart. Will leaned forward slightly. And you think that's me? I think you're either desperate or determined, she said. Sometimes it's the same thing. He didn't answer right away. She closed the folder. I'm offering you a job, not the one you applied for, something better. His brows lifted. What kind of job? Project Operations Coordinator. You'd oversee logistics for a new development site we're building in Hudson Yard. It's a temporary contract, but if you don't screw it up, you'll stay on. He stared at her. Why are you doing this? Amara's tone was dry. I like to gamble. No, really. She considered that for a moment. Because I've been underestimated before, and I know how dangerous people like us can be when we're given a shot. The room was silent for a beat. I won't let you down, Will said finally. You'd better not. She handed him a sleek black envelope. Inside are the onboarding documents, your ID, and the address of the site. Start tomorrow, 7 a.m. He took the envelope, still stunned. As he stood to leave, Amara moved toward her desk and pulled open a drawer. She held out a small white card. What's that? He asked. A child care service, trust. You'll need someone more consistent than your neighbor if you're working full days. He hesitated before taking it. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet, she replied. There's still a 90-day probation period. Later that evening, Nora sat on the floor of their tiny apartment, drawing a picture of a dog with 3 heads. Will had never seen her so focused. You think it'll eat people? She asked without looking up. Only rude ones, he answered, folding laundry. Did you get the job? He nodded. I did, but not the same one, a better one. Nora set down her crayon. Does that mean we can get the purple cereal again? Maybe, if we budget right. She clapped and went back to coloring. Will watched her, a strange sense of stability settling somewhere in his chest. The next morning, he arrived at the construction site 15 minutes early. The foreman, a no-nonsense woman named Dana with a clipboard and a voice that could command a freight train, walked him through the project's status. By noon, he was knee-deep in budgeting documents, vendor lists, and steel delivery schedules. It wasn't glamorous, but it made sense to him. The chaos had a rhythm. He could handle this. At exactly 5:30, he stepped out of the trailer, brushing dust off his pants, and saw a sleek black SUV parked by the curb. The back window rolled down. Amara. You clean up well, she said. You stalking your new hires now? He asked. She leaned her elbow on the door. Had a meeting nearby, thought I'd check if you were still breathing. I am. Good, you're going to need all your energy. He raised an eyebrow. Why? She opened the passenger door. Get in, I'm buying dinner. I have to pick up Nora. Already handled, she's with the sitter I recommended. Called ahead. Will hesitated. I'm not kidnapping you, Amara added. It's just food. He slid into the car. You really don't take no for an answer, do you? She gave him a look. Only when I know I'm right. As the SUV pulled into traffic, Will glanced sideways at her. So this is normal for you, recruiting guys you met in lobbies and driving them to dinner. Amara's tone was even. Only when they spill coffee on me and don't grovel. He laughed. You didn't look at me like I was above you, she said, almost absently. I didn't know who you were. Exactly. They pulled up to a restaurant with no sign, just a valet in a tailored jacket and a wall of opaque glass. You're serious? Will asked. Come on, she said, try something new. He followed her inside, not knowing what to expect. He just knew his life was no longer the same. Will had never eaten risotto that didn't come from a box, let alone one topped with roasted duck and truffle shaving. The restaurant was dimly lit, the kind of place where the napkins were folded like origami and the waiters moved so silently it felt like a magic trick. He kept his hands in his lap and tried not to knock over his water glass again. Across from him, Amara sat with her back straight and her eyes moving between her phone and the menu. She hadn't spoken much since they arrived, her attention caught by an email that seemed to require more than her usual cool focus. Her expression hadn't changed, but Will noticed the way one of her fingers tapped against the base of her wine glass. He leaned forward slightly. You always work while you eat. She looked up, blinking once before setting the phone aside. Only when the board forgets I'm not on call 24 hours a day. Sounds exhausting, he said, watching her carefully. It is, but I built this company. I owe it to myself to protect it. He nodded slowly. So what does protecting it look like right now? Convincing 3 men who think I have no place running logistics in Dubai that they'd be unemployed without my signature. She picked up her fork. And making sure my CFO doesn't approve a merger I never greenlit. Will exhaled softly. Right, just normal dinner conversation. Is this too much? She asked, pausing. The restaurant, the food, me dragging you here. He shook his head. No, it's just different. I'm used to chicken nuggets and trying to finish dinner before someone spills milk. Amara's lips twitched faintly. Sounds chaotic. It's the kind of chaos I know how to survive. He glanced down at his plate, then back at her. But this is like walking into a dream and trying not to knock over a chandelier. I've broken a few, she said lightly. Not everything in my world is as polished as it looks. He studied her for a moment. What was it like before all this? She tilted her head. You mean before could buy a building faster than most people can rent an apartment? He didn't laugh, he waited. She rested her elbow on the table, her expression shifting. It was quiet. I grew up in a suburb where everyone's lawn looked like it was measured by the same ruler. My mom worked nights at a hospital. My dad left when I was 13. Will's eyes didn't move from hers. That's a tough age to lose someone, even if they're not gone. I remember the silence more than anything, she said. The kind that echoes. Hated it. He nodded once. I know that kind of quiet. I believe you do. They ate in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't press on the ribs but settled like something understood. When the waiter cleared their plates, he left behind 2 small glasses and a square dish of dark chocolate with sea salt. I didn't order this, Will said. I did, she replied. You look like you needed something sweet. He hesitated, then broke off a corner and tried it. Okay, that's unfairly good. Amara leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. Tell me something I don't know about you. Will raised an eyebrow. You already know I wear mismatched shoes and can't hold on a coffee. I want something real. He took a slow breath. All right, I used to be a music teacher. That caught her off guard. Really? Yeah, high school band. Saxophone was my thing. It was decent, not brilliant, but I loved it. What happened? He looked out the window before answering. The school cut funding, then my wife got sick. Bills piled up. Music didn't pay for treatments, so I left it behind. Amara's voice was quieter now. I didn't know you were widowed. He nodded once. It's been 3 years. Nora barely remembers her. I'm sorry. Me too. She didn't ask more, and he was grateful for that. Instead, she poured a little more wine into his glass and leaned back in her seat. You could have told me all this when we first met, she said. I could have, he agreed, but you were wearing a white blazer and looked like you could buy a planet. I didn't think my life story would have interested you. It does, she said simply. They stepped outside into the cool evening air, the city humming around them. Amara paused beside the SUV, her driver already waiting with the door open. Want a ride? She asked. He looked at the car, then back at her. I'll walk. Fresh air helps me think. She seemed to consider that. Fair enough. Will hesitated, then asked, why me? What do you mean? You could have hired anyone. There's 1,000 people more qualified, more polished. Why take a chance on a guy who hasn't worn a suit in 5 years? She stepped closer, close enough that he caught the faintest trace of something floral and sharp expensive. but not sweet. "Because you didn't look at me like I was untouchable," she said. "You looked at me like a person. That doesn't happen much anymore." He didn't move. "Besides," she added, "you've got something most of those polished types don't." "What's that?" "Nothing to lose." He watched her climb into the car and disappear into traffic, taillights vanishing around the corner like the end of a sentence. He stood there for a long time before finally turning and heading home. The streets were quieter now, the air settling into that late-hour stillness that felt like it belonged to someone else. When he reached the apartment, Nora was asleep on the couch, a blanket tucked around her shoulders. A young woman with short pink hair and a nose ring nodded at him from the kitchen. "She was great," the sitter said. "Told me all about her three-headed dog army." Will smiled. "That sounds like her." He paid and thanked her, then sat beside Nora, brushing a curl from her forehead. Something had shifted. Not just a job, not just a dinner. Something deeper. And it scared him, because for the first time in a long while, Will Emerson wasn't just surviving anymore. He was beginning to hope. Will stood at the edge of the rooftop garden of Hayes Capital's newest property, a half-completed eco-luxury residential building, still draped in scaffolding and surrounded by steel framework. The sun was melting behind the city's jagged skyline, casting gold across the Hudson, and for a rare moment, the noise of machinery had gone quiet. Amara was beside him, dressed in a tailored blazer the color of burnt copper, clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning the final checklist before the soft opening event. She didn't speak right away, but he could feel her tension in the way she tapped the pen against her palm. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded once, then closed the clipboard. "It's just a launch, but everything rides on this going smoothly." "You've done bigger," Will said. "Not with this much press, not with my name on every headline." He leaned against the railing. "You built this from nothing. It's solid, it'll hold." She looked at him, her mouth pressing into a line. "That's not what I'm worried about." Before he could ask, a crew member waved her down from the elevator bay, and she disappeared into a sea of last-minute prep. Will stayed behind, watching the city darken as the lights below blinked on one by one. Later that night, the rooftop looked like something out of a magazine's string lights coiled around iron support beams, potted citrus trees lining the edges, and a string quartet softly echoing against the steel bones of the unfinished building. Guests arrived in sleek cars, ushered through temporary elevators by staff in black suits. Every major investor, journalist, and city official invited had shown. And Will, wearing a barred jacket and polished shoes that actually matched, stood just outside the cocktail area holding a plate of something with edible flowers on it, and wondering if anyone would notice if he made a run for a hot dog cart. "Stop scanning the exits," Amara said behind him. "You'll make the donors nervous." He turned. "Are you sure I'm supposed to be here?" "You've been working overtime to get this site ready. You earned your place." He glanced around. "I just laid out a few schedules and kept the contractors from walking off." "You kept the entire timeline from imploding," she said, "and you did it with half the resources and none of the ego." He looked at her, unguarded. "I don't know how to exist in a world like this. I keep expecting someone to ask me to leave." "Then you're not seeing the way people look at you," she said. "They respect you." He shook his head. "That doesn't happen to people like me." "Well," she said, her gaze steady, "maybe it should." The music shifted, and Amara excused herself to speak with a board member near the bar. Will stayed back, watching her navigate the crowd like she was born to it. Every movement, every word was deliberate, sharp, effective. And yet, when her eyes found his across the rooftop, something in them softened. He didn't move, neither did she. A few minutes later, a photographer approached him. Mr. Emerson, could we get a shot of you with MS Hayes by the model display? Will blinked, me. Yes, sir. You're listed on the operations team for this site. He hesitated, then nodded. Sure. They led him to where Amara was already posing beside a scale model of the development. She looked over as he approached. Caught in the spotlight, she said under her breath. I didn't agree to be famous, he replied. Too late. The camera flashed. After the photo, Amara didn't step away. Her hand brushed his not an accident and lingered for a moment longer than necessary. You doing okay? She asked quietly. I should be asking you that. Her eyes flicked to the skyline. I've spent so long building everything, I forgot what it's like to share it. He didn't respond right away. Then, with a steady voice, he said, That doesn't have to be permanent. She turned fully to face him. What do you mean? I mean, Nora asked me if you were my girlfriend again. A low laugh escaped her. She's persistent. She said you must be if you bought me dinner and let her jump on your couch. Amara raised an eyebrow. She jumped on my couch. Twice. I told her to stop. She told me you didn't mind. She smiled faintly. She wasn't wrong. He took a breath. I don't know what this is, but I haven't felt this grounded in years, not since. She waited. He lifted his eyes. Not since before my wife got sick, and I'm not trying to replace that part of my life, but I'm not afraid of feeling something again. Amara stepped closer. Neither am I. There, in the middle of the rooftop, surrounded by polished guests and the glow of 1,000 lights, he kissed her. It wasn't rushed or dramatic. It was honest, solid, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for promises but offered something better, presence. When it broke, her hand stayed against his chest. You're not just surviving anymore, she said. I know. A week later, Will stood in a sunlit office on the 28th floor of Hayes Capital, a desk with his name on the door, a real salary, health benefits, and a picture Nora had drawn taped to the wall him, and Amara standing under a lopsided tree. Amara knocked once before stepping inside. We got final approval on the Hudson project. You'll be overseeing phase 2. He blinked, seriously. You've earned it. He stood, thank you. She tilted her head. You still owe me a coffee, by the way. He chuckled. I was hoping you forgot. I forget a lot of things, she replied, but not the start of something good. He stepped out from behind the desk and walked over to her. I don't have coffee, he said, but I've got something else. Oh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. She opened it carefully, revealing a simple gold pendant with a tiny coffee bean charm. No diamonds, no flash, just meaning. Her eyes lifted to his, unreadable for a moment. You're ridiculous, she said softly. And you're impossible. I'm keeping it. I hoped you would. Later that evening, they sat on Will's worn apartment couch, Nora curled between them with a book in her lap, her head resting on Amara's arm. The TV played some old cartoon, forgotten in the background. Outside, the city buzzed, but inside there was only warmth. Will didn't say anything, he just looked at Amara. And she looked back. No contracts, no negotiations. Just something simple. Real. Earned. Rain tapped steadily against the glass walls of the conference room as Will adjusted the cuff of his blazer and glanced at the digital clock above the door. The final quarterly review for the Hudson project was about to begin, and for the first time, he wasn't just a name on the report he was presenting it. Across the table, Amara sat with her elbow resting on the table's edge, her gaze sweeping the room. She hadn't said much since this morning, and Will could tell something was different. Not wrong, but thoughtful. Focused in a way that wasn't about the numbers. "You're quiet," he said under his breath. She didn't look at him, but her lips moved. "Just listening." "To what?" "Everything," she said. He would have asked more, but the board members filed in, one by one, laptops open and expressions unreadable. The meeting began with the usual politeness, but as Will launched into his presentation, something shifted. The room leaned in. The charts, the timelines, the contractor efficiency model he developed, all of it landed exactly the way it needed to. When he finished, there was a brief silence, then one of the partners leaned forward. "These projections are better than we anticipated. If these margins hold, we're looking at a multi-year growth trajectory." Will nodded once, then sat down. He didn't need to say more. After the meeting, as the room cleared and the rain finally began to slow, Amara stood and crossed to the window. Will joined her, waiting. She turned to him. "You know what today is?" He shook his head. "1 year since you spilled coffee on me." He blinked. "You're serious?" She nodded. "I had a reminder set on my calendar. Coffee incident day." "That's ridiculous." "And accurate." He looked at her, something flickering behind his eyes. "You could have fired me a dozen times." "You gave me reasons not to." He stepped closer. "Is that what this is, a list of reasons?" "No," she said, voice lower now. "This is me realizing I don't want to keep my life divided anymore. Work and personal, logic and feeling. I'm tired of splitting myself in half." He touched her hand, his thumb brushing the edge of her palm. "Then don't." She looked up at him. "You and Nora, you're not a detour. You're the part, didn't plan for, but can't imagine being without." He let out a breath and his voice dropped. "I want to build something with you, not just the projects, a life, all of it." She didn't answer with words. She reached for his collar and kissed him, slow and sure, like the city outside didn't exist. Later that evening, Will walked through the front door of their new home, a sunlit brownstone just a few blocks from Nora's school. The walls were still half covered in moving boxes, but it already smelled like home. Lavender from the diffuser Amara had insisted on, and cinnamon from the rolls Will had tried to bake that morning with Nora, only half successfully. Nora came running down the stairs, socks sliding on the hardwood. "Are we still doing the surprise tonight?" Will crouched to her level. "We are, but you have to stay in your room until we call you." She made a face. "Not fair." "Extremely fair. Go." She dashed away, giggling. Will turned to find Amara in the kitchen, her sleeves rolled up as she arranged candles on the small table by the window. "You sure you want to do it like this?" she asked without looking up. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. She turned and froze when she saw it. "You're not supposed to do that until dessert." "Plans change." He stepped forward, opened the box, and revealed a band of gold, simple and elegant, with a small engraving on the inside. "No more halves." Amara stared at it for a heartbeat. "You're really doing this." "I'm really doing this, and I know there's no perfect moment, but I don't want to wait for one. I want to make one." She took the ring without hesitation and slid it onto her finger. "Then, I guess we're doing this together." The following spring, they married in the rooftop garden of the completed Hudson Yard building, beneath a canopy of wildflowers and string lights. Nora wore a crown of yellow daisies and was officially dubbed Chief Happiness Officer by Amara, who delivered the title in front of 80 guests and a photographer who barely kept up with the laughter. As they said their vows, the city stretched around them, sunlit and full. "From the moment you crashed into me," Amara said, her voice steady, "you've been the chaos I never knew I needed. You didn't just change the rhythm of my life. You gave it a melody." Will reached for her hand. I didn't think I'd love like this again, but you make everything feel possible. They kissed as the crowd erupted in cheers, Nora letting out the loudest whoop of all. After the reception, they returned to the brownstone, still in their wedding clothes, barefoot in the kitchen, dancing to the soft hum of an old jazz record. "This is it," Will whispered against her temple. She leaned into him. No more halves. No more waiting. No more coffee disasters. He chuckled. "Well, let's not make promises we can't keep." She smiled and kissed him again. They didn't need a perfect moment. They had each other. Forever,